The HOA illegally built 35 homes on my private land and then had the nerve to send me a trespassing notice. They figured I'd fight them in court, bleed money on lawyers, and eventually give up. But they didn't know about the old dam sitting upstream. They didn't just break the law. They broke the land itself, and I was about to let the land fight back. For years, all I wanted was a piece of the world to call my own, not some tiny suburban lot with nosy neighbors and a rule book for how high your grass can get. I wanted real space. I wanted silence. After a decade of saving every penny, I finally found it. A sprawling, 200-acre piece of untouched wilderness. It was rugged, remote, and perfect. The property was flanked by a dense national forest on one side and a brand-new, master-planned community way down in the valley on the other. I could barely see their cookie-cutter houses from my ridge, and that's exactly how I liked it. My property had character. It had history. Tucked away at the northern edge was a massive, old concrete dam, built back in the 40s and decommissioned decades ago. The reservoir behind it was still half full, fed by mountain streams. I just saw it as a cool piece of history, a silent monument in my private sanctuary. I never, ever imagined it would become my weapon. I had to go overseas for about 6 months to wrap up some business before I could start building my own little cabin. I left dreaming of the quiet life that was waiting for me. But the welcome I got when I came back was a total nightmare. Driving down the long dirt road to my property, I could tell something was wrong. The air, which should have smelled like pine and damp earth, smelled of fresh-cut lumber and fertilizer. I heard the distant, grating whine of lawnmowers. I parked my truck and walked toward the valley, my heart pounding with a horrible sense of dread. And then I saw it. It was like a scar carved into my land. Where a meadow bordered by ancient oaks once stood, there was now a perfectly paved cul-de-sac. Lined up in neat, sterile rows were houses. Not one or two. 35 of them. Identical beige boxers with bright green, chemically treated lawns. The suburb I bought this land to escape had literally crawled over my property line, swallowing nearly 40 acres of my valley. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Building a single house takes surveyors, permits, title searches, and endless paperwork. How could someone build an entire neighborhood on land they didn't own? It felt less like a property dispute and more like I'd woken up in a bizarro world where laws didn't matter. I stumbled forward in a daze, stepping from my wild forest onto a pristine, HOA-approved lawn. I was a trespasser on my own land. My first call was to the developer, who passed me off to the president of the Homeowners Association. We'll call her Brenda. She met me on site with a smug little smile and a binder full of papers. She had the kind of entitled arrogance you only see in someone with a tiny bit of power. She calmly explained that, because of a minor survey error and some ambiguous deeds, the HOA had just gone ahead with construction. She said it like they'd accidentally planted a few petunias in my garden, not stolen a huge chunk of my property. Then came the insult she tried to pass off as an offer. They'd graciously buy the land from me for a fraction of its real value, as a good faith gesture. I refused. My land wasn't for sale, especially not to the people who'd already stolen it. That's when the gloves came off. A week later, I get a letter. It was a formal notice from the HOA, fining me for trespassing on my own land. They claimed that since their neighborhood was now established, my presence was a violation of their community rules. What would you do? Seriously, drop a comment below, because I felt like I was going crazy. I hired a good lawyer who was just as stunned as I was. We sent cease and desist letters with my ironclad deed and the official county surveys. The HOA's lawyer shot back a letter that casually mentioned adverse possession, as if they could legally claim my land just by occupying it for a few months. Which is you ain't how that works at all. We called the police, but they took one look at the competing sets of official-looking documents and declared it a civil matter. The HOA had deep pockets funded by 35 new homeowners, and they were ready to drag this out in court until I was broke. Months turned into a year. The legal fees were crushing me. The stress was unreal. The HOA, led by Brenda, was stonewalling us at every opportunity, filing pointless motions to delay everything. All the while, those 35 houses sat there, a monument to their crime. I was losing hope, feeling completely powerless. One evening, totally defeated, I went for a walk and found myself at the base of the old dam. I looked at the calm water behind it, then traced the path of the dry riverbed that snaked down from its base, right through the valley. A riverbed that ran directly through the new Igael Kudesak. Denit hit me like a bolt of lightning. I raced back to my house and tore through the mountain of paperwork from the sale. I wasn't just looking at the deed this time, and there it was, in a dusty addendum from the county. Not only did I own the dam, but I also owned the primary water rights for the entire parcel, the stream, the reservoir, the whole historical waterway. The plan forming in my mind wasn't about revenge, it was about restoration. The HOA hadn't just built on my land, they had built on a floodplain. They had illegally blocked a natural waterway. They had broken environmental laws. I didn't have to beat them in court. I just had to remind the state of what this land truly was. I didn't just go up there and crack open the valve. That would be criminal. I was going to do this by the book, the very bureaucracy they loved so much. My lawyer and I drafted a new set of documents, but not for the HOA. These were for the State Department of Environmental Protection and the Army Corps of Engineers. We presented a simple, factual case. We laid out my deed, my water rights certificate, and old county maps showing the river's natural path. Then we showed them the satellite images of 35 homes built right on top of it. We didn't file a complaint. We filed a natural waterway restoration project proposal. Suddenly, the government agencies, who had been completely unaware, were very interested. An illegal development blocking a designated waterway is a massive violation, with astronomical fines. Investigators were all over the site, and the HOA's flimsy permits dissolved under real scrutiny. Brenda's smug confidence was gone, replaced with pure panic. The state's ruling was better than I could have ever imagined. The entire development was an illegal obstruction and a public hazard. The structures had to be removed, and the waterway had to be restored. And the best part, the state authorized me, as the landowner with the water rights, to prove the imminent flood risk. The day came. I stood on top of that old dam, a state official by my side. I grabbed the large, rusted wheel of the main sluice gate. It groaned after decades of silence. With a final, heaving turn, it gave way. It started as a trickle. Tin ice stream. Tin, a steady, confident flow. The water poured out, not in a destructive wave, but as a slow, deliberate reclamation. It followed its old path, pooling in the valley, turning the manicured lawns into mush. It wasn't a flood to destroy the houses, but it was enough to prove without a doubt that they were sitting in the middle of a natural floodplain. The HOA imploded, faced with undeniable evidence of fraudulent surveys and environmental violations. Their insurance denied every claim. The 35 homeowners, who were victims of the developer and the HOA scheme, filed a massive class action lawsuit. The legal fees, plus the crippling state fines, bankrupted the HOA entirely. The association was legally dissolved. Brenda and the rest of the board faced criminal charges for fraud. The law finally caught up. Today, the river flows freely through my valley. The houses, condemned as uninhabitable, were eventually demolished as part of the state-mandated cleanup. Nature is already taking over, and the scars of their greed are starting to fade. I finally have my solitude. But more than that, I look at that river and I know that justice, like water, will always find its course. They thought they could bury my rights under concrete, but they forgot what happens when you build your house in the middle of a riverbed. Bullying HOAs and greedy developers are more common than you'd think. If you enjoy stories about them getting exactly what they deserve, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. In the end, I didn't need a bitter, decade-long court battle. I just needed to understand the true power of what I owned. They saw a piece of land to be exploited. I saw an ecosystem with its own rights. I didn't unleash a flood of revenge. I simply helped restore the natural order of things, and that was the most satisfying part of all.